Okay. So the call recording is on, and so as I mentioned, today's focus is going to be on how to actually create and set up a webcast. So once you get your login credentials, you'll be logging into Webcast Elite, which is where I'm at now. And by default, you will be placed on what we call the My Webcast page. And this essentially is your webcast library. So as you begin creating your webcasts, they're all going to be listed here. And so you can sort them based on their title, the live start time, or when they expired. And if you have one account with multiple logins, you can also sort it by who created the webcast. So if there's going to be multiple people creating them and setting them up, you can sort the webcast based on that as well. So as you begin building and creating them, they'll all be listed here. Now, I do want to call your attention to the utilities column here on the right-hand side. So this first option that you have here is to create a copy of your webcast. And this essentially is going to clone the webcast. So it's going to save you considerable time and effort. So you can literally copy the webcast and then choose like a different date and repurpose it for the future. So really all you would have to do then is, make minor changes if needed, or re-upload a PowerPoint if you're using a different PowerPoint for the webcast. So that's going to save you considerable time and effort because it's going to copy everything on the registration page, the email notifications, the audience console, all that will be copied for you. The other thing that you're going to hear us talk a lot about is webcast URLs. You're probably going to hear me reference this more times than not. And with every webcast you create, it comes with its own unique set of URLs. So the first URL is the audience URL. This is the only URL that you will ever distribute to the public. It's the one that you're going to use to begin promoting and marketing your webcast. So if you wanted to copy this link and place it on Twitter or social media or your corporate website, whatever the case may be, this is the link that you distribute to the public and invite people to attend. Now, the reports URL is where we keep all the data and analytics for your webcast. So if you need to print off a report of who registered or how many people registered, or maybe you want a copy of all the questions that were submitted during the webcast, or you want to see how long people watched, whatever the case may be, all that's going to be kept in the report URL. The preview URL is going to really come in handy when we get together back on Wednesday, because that's going to help you test the layout and the functionality of the audience console, which is something we'll be building. And I'll show you on Wednesday when we get back together how this link in particular is going to be helpful when you have to rehearse for your live webcast. And then, of course, the present URL is just for presenters. Anybody that's going to be part of the presenting team, whether it's the moderator, the Q&A screener, the speaker, anybody that's part of the presenting team is going to need that present URL. So again, the webcast URLs are going to be accessible by clicking on this globe icon here. And then if you need to, you can delete a webcast, but by default, the system will not let you delete a webcast if there are registrants attached to it. So if you accidentally create a webcast on accident, you can easily delete it by clicking the trash can. All right, so to begin creating a webcast, you would just click on the Create New button, and you'll get taken to this screen. So I'll just call this Training with Mandy. And then here are the different present types, and if you're not sure what each present type is, you can click on this little help icon and it gives you an overview. So you can see presenting by phone is simply you're going to dial in over the phone and talk live to your audience while pushing slides, or you can choose to present using a webcam. Present by phone with screen share is great if you need to do a live demonstration during the webcast, like if you need to share your desktop for any reason, like I'm doing today. I can do that during a live webcast as long as I choose this feature. On-demand recording, semi-live, and broadcast video, those are all add-on features that don't come standard, so your account would have to be set up that way. But in summary, on-demand recording and semi-live is where you pre-record the webcast, but with the semi-live webcast, you can actually schedule when you want it to play to a live audience, which is pretty cool. But for your guys' purposes, my understanding is you are doing live webcasts over the phone. So I'm going to choose present by phone as my present type. And then the live start time is when this webcast is going to begin for your audience. So you can kick it out as far in advance in the future as you need to. So we'll have this one on July 2nd. And this is when the webcast is going to begin. So 9 a.m. And then, like I said, I'm on the East Coast, but if I wanted to, I could change it. We've got all sorts of different time zones here. The duration is how long you anticipate the webcast will be. Regardless of what you choose here, we give you 60 minutes of additional time, so a 60-minute grace period basically. So if you select an hour and things are running a little bit over, don't panic because we're not just going to cut you off once it's been an hour. We'll give you an additional hour of grace period beyond what you select here. And then the audience is your audience language. So if I was presenting to a different country, I can translate all the default messages by choosing a different language. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Once you create your webcast, our system is going to automatically generate what we call an overview page. Now, the overview page has a lot of important information on it, one of it being the event ID. Anytime you communicate with ON24, you want to make sure you include the event ID. So whether you're contacting technical support or you're emailing Ruth, your account manager, whatever the case may be, always provide us with the event ID. Below that is the presenter information, which I'll cover more on Wednesday when we do our presenter training. But in summary, this is basically the dial-in number and the passcode you would have to distribute to all of your presenters so they could dial in. All right, and you'll see I'm just going to kind of go right across the top here, so registration, email notifications, and so on. So we're going to start by looking at our registration page. So by default, this box is going to be checked. So by default, everybody is going to have a registration page. You don't want to uncheck that box because if you do, it could mess with the reporting. So if you don't collect data from your attendees by having them register, then we're not going to be able to record, their interactivity with the webcast. By default, everybody starts off with these 4 registration fields. So to add additional registration fields, you can click here. And you can see that we even have populated even more options for you. So if you want to know what city and state they're from, their zip code, so maybe instead of calling that a postal code, I could change the name to zip code. Maybe I want to know what their job title is. So I can either just choose from the list of choices that have already been populated, or I can add my own custom ones. So let's see, would you like to receive a copy of our newsletter? All right, so maybe that's one of my custom fields. And I can add another one. So if I was, let's say, doing an internal training, maybe I want to know their years of experience on the job. Whatever the case may be, you can add as many custom fields as you want. All right, so we had a great question come in. Do you have to create a new registration page every time, or is there a way to create a default look? That's a great question, Brenna. The answer is that we can set up a template for your registration page, so that way all of your events the registration page will be based off of that template. So if that is something that you want to do to kind of keep the look consistent, what you would need to do is just set up an event and design the registration page the way that you want it, and then give Ruth, who's your customer success manager, give her the event ID of the event that you wish to use as a template. And so that way, you're going to have to build everything up the way that you want it on the registration page, and then once you do that, you can give it to Ruth, and she can make that webcast the default or the template for the registration page. So you're entitled to 1 template per webcast per account. So you can't have more than 1 template, unfortunately. So you just have to build it the way that you want it, give her the event ID, and then we can take it from there. So now that you know how to add fields, you can see I can easily drag and drop them in the order I want them to be in, so it's up to you. how you want to organize those. But now let's talk about branding. So if you wish to upload a company logo, you can easily do that by uploading a banner. And you can see here that the recommended width is 700 pixels. So if you get the image at 700 pixels wide, it's going to be nice and centered at the top of the registration page. If it's less than 700 pixels, that's fine too. It's not going to break anything. It just means that it most likely will be aligned to the left instead of the center. Now you can upload your banner just by uploading an image. You can see as long as it's in a JPEG, a GIF, or a PNG format, either of those would work. So let me see what I've got here. All right, so here in just a minute you'll see my banner appear. And then you can remove the banner or upload an entirely different image if you decided you uploaded the wrong one. And then now that you've got the banner, the next step here is to put together the promotional summary. So this is essentially the heart of your registration page. And it's pretty straightforward. You just enter your text. You can copy and paste this information from a website. So I'll show you just really quickly. I'll just pull up On24. But it's really up to you how you utilize this space. Do you want to include a speaker biography? Or maybe you want to include an agenda or some learning outcomes of what they can expect to walk away with, whatever the case may be. But here you can see is our CEO. So I'm actually just going to copy his picture and biography and paste it right in here into my registration page. And if I wanted to get fancy with it, I could, change the color of the font. So there's more color choices. So let's pick a color. You can see that you can hyperlink, or you can also build the registration page using an HTML source. So if you want to integrate, social media images or whatever, I've seen, a lot of people, just to show you an example. Just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, it may not be a bad idea for you to save, these into separate documents. Like, for example, this is a registration page that we had our creative team build. And so you can see I copy and pasted the code into a notepad file. And then so now I'm going to delete what I have and then just paste this new code in here and click Save. And now you can see that by using the HTML, I could get a lot fancier with it. I was able to do a live embed of a YouTube video. I've got the different sections here. I'll have to check the sources on my images here, but this is actually a Twitter picture and a Facebook picture that I have hyperlinked to a Twitter account and to a Facebook page. So it's really up to you how simple or how much you want to jazz it up, because you've got the source button here. If you want to insert images, you can see that you can do that here through this. Now, the thing to remember about the images is you're not able to upload images from your computer, because you can see here that images are uploaded through the image URL. So it could be something as simple as going to Google Images, and of course copyright's an issue, so I don't know, we'll just say basketball. But if you have an image on your company website, chances are it's uploaded through an image URL. So you would need to know what the image URL is before you could upload it into, there you go, properties. Ooh, that's a long URL. But basically you can copy the image URL and use that in your here, if I wanted to do that. That's how you would upload images, is either through the image URL or by, adding them through the HTML source. All right, and always make sure you click Save, because it does not auto-save. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. It's making me, it'll make you save your changes before you close out of the page, so just a heads up on that. But now, if I take a preview, you can see And keep in mind, I'm zoomed in pretty far on my screen just to help you guys see a little bit better while we screen share. So my banner normally is not going to look this large. So here we go, that's more proportional. There's my banner. This is going to be the webcast title. It'll automatically be populated. You can see that I've built in the date and time into the promotional summary area. Here's all my registration fields. So if you want to customize a particular answer field, you can do that by clicking on the title. And we have six different answer formats to choose from. So this is, would you like to receive a copy of our newsletter? I forgot to put in my answer choices. I can say yes or no. And then here with the checkbox, I can decide if I want to make that question required or not. So now if we preview it, you can see those are the radio buttons that I had. All right, now I want to talk about the lobby page. The lobby page is not a page you can edit because by default what our system does is it captures everything it sees on the reg page and then brings it right over into the lobby. So that's why the pages look almost identical, with the exception that when the lobby opens, the lobby is going to open 15 minutes early, which means your audience can arrive up to 15 minutes early. So the lobby page kind of also serves as a registration confirmation because it reminds them of the date and time of when the webcast will begin. And it lets them know that they can arrive 15 minutes early. And when they arrive 15 minutes early, they're going to see this launch presentation button. That is what they are going to click in order to gain entry into the webcast. So that launch presentation button will appear 15 minutes early. And so in other words, if you have somebody that shows up, let's say 20 minutes early, they're not going to see that launch button. But this page auto refreshes every 60 seconds. So once they get within that 15-minute mark, that launch button will automatically appear, and they would click on this and then gain entry into the webcast. All right, so that is registration and lobby page. I'll just pause here for a minute to see if there's any questions before we dive into the email notifications. All right. Okay, so moving right along. So here's the email notifications. You can see that with your live webcast, we've already pre-populated 5 different emails for you. We've got a registration confirmation, 2 reminder emails, and then once the webcast concludes, they're going to receive either a thank you for attending or a sorry we missed you email. Automatically, they're active, so if you wanted to deactivate them, you would just uncheck the box. And then when it comes to determining when these emails will be sent, that's when you have the options here on the drop-down menu. So you can send them as early as 2 weeks before the webcast, and then you can send them as soon as when the webcast starts. So you have these options here. Just keep in mind that you notice that there's not an option listed here where I can just do an email blast on the fly. So you are limited in the sense that you'll have to select when these emails will be, you'll have to determine when these emails will be sent based on the drop-down menu here. So just be mindful of that. And then you can preview and edit these emails by clicking here. So this is the registration confirmation email, and you'll notice we've got all these hashtag symbols or pound symbols, and these are called tokens. And so our system can read the tokens, and so instead of you having to type in the event title and the event date and the time, that's when we use a token. So one way to maybe make this a little more personal is you can add their first and last name as a token. So I can address them by their first name, their full name if I wanted. You can see we've got tokens for all these other options here. So I'm going to choose a token for first name. So it'll say Dear Mandy, and then of course you got to have the comma for good grammar. So now when I receive this email, it'll say my first name, thank you for registering, and then it'll give me the event title. But the nice thing about this is notice that we've automatically included that audience URL. So here's the webcast URLs I was talking about. So there's no need for you to have to worry about copying and pasting this link into all the emails, because we're going to automatically do that for you through the audience URL token. Now, a question I get asked a lot is, can I delete this email address? You can't delete it, but what you can do is add your company name or a sender name. So you could add your company name, and then after the sender name, there needs to be one space. So you'll press the space bar one time, and then you'll enclose the do not reply email address in the less than and greater than symbols. If you follow that formatting, you'll have no problems. Because I know a lot of people have a problem. They don't like it, when the email comes in that it says do not reply. So by adding a company name, when the registrants and attendees start receiving these emails, it'll say, from On24 or from Mandy Durrance or whatever you want to do here for the sender name. Now, to make sure it's working, always save your changes and then send yourself a test email. So it should automatically populate your account email address here, and then just send yourself a test. So if you receive the test email, then you know that everything is configured properly and the emails are going to go through. The reason why you can't, if you try to delete this email address, it's basically going to break the system, and therefore none of your event emails will be sent. So it's really important that you know not to delete it, and if you do want to reformat it, you can add your name or your company's name. Then there's one space, and then you have to enclose the do not reply email address in the less than and greater than symbols. One thing I want to point out is this first reminder email is actually set to go out 2 days before the webcast. If you make any changes from the default settings here, please make sure you preview and edit the emails, because you can see that the very first line says it begins in 2 days. Well, if I decide to send this email sooner or later, I'm going to need to change that text so there's no conflicting information. And you'll notice that these emails are, the editor here is identical to the editor that I showed you on the registration page. So the same editing and customization that you have on the registration page you can do here. So you can add images, you can hyperlink, you can completely redesign or reformat this using an HTML source. Now, we are not able to create email templates. But like I said, if you want to use my shortcut, you can just copy and paste all the information from these emails into like a Word document or a Notepad file and save them somewhere locally. So that way, if you plan on reusing that as a template, you can just simply copy and paste. But by default, the emails will always be set up for you to read what you see here. All right, so next up is how to upload your content. So let me save and close out of here. Here's where you would go to upload your PowerPoint and your video clips. So you can upload one PowerPoint per webcast. So if you have multiple speakers and each speaker is going to be sending you their slides, that's fine, but everything needs to be condensed down into one PowerPoint file because you're only able to upload one PowerPoint per webcast. Here on the video clips, you can upload up to 10 video clips as long as they're in an MP4 or FLV format. So those two file formats are accepted. And you can upload up to 10 video clips. So if you had, I'm not going to do it for the sake of time, but if you had like a commercial or a short video clip or an ad or maybe a pre-recorded demonstration, anything of that nature that you would like to play during the webcast, you can upload it as a video clip. Now the thing to remember with the PowerPoint is, let me show you. You want to be patient with it. Let it finish. Oops, I went in the wrong folder. Let it finish uploading, and then once it's done uploading, it's going to start the conversion process. And once that conversion process starts, it's going to give you a message that you can go ahead and navigate away. Now you'll notice that throughout these pages I've had this Walk Me Through tab, and that's always going to be here. So if you need extra assistance on any of the pages, if you click on this, you can see right here we have the PowerPoint best practices. So I highly recommend that whoever is going to be in charge of creating slides or putting the PowerPoint together, that they watch this video. It's 6 minutes long. It goes through all the configurations and just the need-to-knows of creating your PowerPoint. The big thing I'll tell you is that your PowerPoint has to be a 4:3 or 16:9 aspect ratio. It has to be configured to one of those two settings because those are the only two that we support. So the very first part of this video goes over that and how you can check to make sure you are using the right aspect ratio. So a 4:3 or a 16:9 aspect ratio. And you can see that my PowerPoint's already starting to convert, so it's safe for me to navigate away. All right, so now we're just going on down the line to the console builder. So before I get into this, is there any questions about setting up emails or video clips, how to upload PowerPoint, registration, anything of that nature that we've covered so far? You guys are quiet, so I hope that means that that this has been helpful. Sure. So, yeah. So Karina asked if I could go over the aspects of the PowerPoint. So here in the upper right-hand corner, in addition to that video, which, oops, I'm on the wrong page. In addition to watching that video, which is definitely one place I always send people to, in our Help Center, so you'll see that there's a help link here in the upper right-hand corner. This is our knowledge base for Elite, and anything and everything you could possibly want to know about Webcast Elite is in here. So in our Best Practices folder, there's that video that I just showed you, so we have it in multiple places. But here are some of the basics, you know, making sure your PowerPoint isn't password protected. It can be no larger than 20 megs. Slide transitions are not supported. So if you like to, you know, when you move to the next slide, you like to have the pages or the slides, you know, fade in or fade out or spin across the page or whatever the case is, slide transitions are not supported. Animations are supported, not transitions. So we do support the majority. Of animations, but there are some that we don't support, and those are listed here. So if you scroll down the page, we'll show you. So actually, Karina asked me to show you how to look and see if your PowerPoint is configured right. So these are actually some PowerPoints that I use for training. So like I said, it has to be a 4:3 or 16:9 aspect ratio. The easiest way to check that is if you open up your PowerPoint presentation and you click on the Design tab, there's something in here called Page Setup, and notice that it says that the on-screen show is 4:3. That's perfectly fine. So that number has to say 4:3 or 16:9. Those are the only two options. It can't be custom. It can't be any of these other options that you see here. It has to be 16:9 or 4:3. So that is how you would check it. So you just open up PowerPoint, click on the Design tab, click on the Page Setup, and then it'll show you right there. All right. And so again, what I just showed you is going to be in this video right here. So you can watch that if you need a recap on how to check. All right. So any other questions before I move on to the console builder? Okay. So I'm going to launch the console builder. And keep in mind, the console builder is what the audience is looking at. So they're not going to be looking at the same interface as you are as a presenter. So you get to fully customize this console how you want it, show your branding, keep up with the corporate color scheme. There's multiple ways you can do that. But you can see that by default, when you create a new webcast and you are building the console, everybody starts off with these two widgets, the media player and the slide area, and everybody has this depressing gray background. So we'll talk about how to change that in just a minute. But a couple of things to remember. Don't ever delete the media player, because if you do, it's going to cause your event to fail. Because remember, that's how your audience is going to be listening to you, is through streaming media and audio through the media player. So don't ever delete that. And don't ever delete the slide area, because if you do, then they can't see your slides. So I know that's I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, but you'd be surprised it happens. So just make sure you don't delete those. Now notice that by default, my slide area is set to 640 by 480, and I know that by reading the dimensions here. So if I select the element and look at the dimensions, I can see exactly how large it is. 640 by 480 is what it will always be sized at by default, and that happens to be a 4:3 aspect ratio. So if you decide to change the PowerPoint, if you know that you're going to be using a 16:9 aspect ratio in PowerPoint, then you need to size the slide widget accordingly. So going back to the PowerPoint best practices, if I scroll down the page here, you can see that 640 by 360 is a 16:9 aspect ratio. So I would need to change my slide area to 640 by 360 to match my aspect ratio. It's really that easy. Not matching the aspect ratio to the console or to the slide widget dimensions will cause your slides to look distorted. So I'm sure we've all had those documents that we've opened where the formatting is off, and the same thing applies here. So the aspect ratios have to match. So 4:3 aspect ratio is 640 by 480, 16:9 is 640 by 360. All right, so enough about aspect ratios. Let's talk about settings. All right, so here in the Settings Manager, the first option you have is to change the skin color. And we're referring to the little bar here at the top of all the widgets. So by default, it's set to gray, but I can change it black, white, or make it transparent. The launch behavior is how do you want your webcast to launch. In this scenario, and by default, it will simply replace the lobby page. So I showed you what the lobby page would look like, how it's basically a copy of the reg page. So basically, when they click on that launch button, it's going to open the console. It's just going to simply refresh and replace the lobby page. We recommend that as a best practice because that's going to prevent interference from pop-up blockers. However, when you're building the console, like we're doing, we recommend turning on this Launch New Window setting. The main reason is because you can see that my console size is set to 1000 by 650, and we recommend leaving it there because we find that that reaches the broadest audience. So whether you have somebody that's watching the webcast on a small netbook or if they're watching it on a nice large computer screen, it's going to accommodate the majority of screen resolutions that people are working with. Because the problem is, you can always create a custom size if you want, but if you are creating a large console, you run in jeopardy of, for those attendees that maybe have a smaller screen, some of the widgets and the slides and other things getting cut off or obstructed from their view. So unless you know exactly what screen resolutions your attendees are going to have, I would recommend leaving it there. Changing the background image and the color is straightforward. So you can do a single color or choose a second one if you want to do a gradient. Notice that I can choose from what's on the color grid here, or if I know the actual HTML color code, I could just copy and paste it into this box here. So that way you can keep your corporate, colors and everything consistent. All right, so I'm going to click Save so you can see how I can change that easily. That's not a pretty color, so I'm just going to go back to something a little more toned down. If you don't want to do a color, you can always do a background image. So if you don't have a background images, we have some that you can download in our Help Center. But if you do have a creative team or people that are going to be in charge of putting background images together, we recommend doing a 1900 by 1200 so that way when attendees maximize the console and take it full screen, the background image will stretch accordingly. But we've got some really nice ones. The ones that I have here that you see on the screen are the same ones that you can actually download and use for your own events. So I'm going to go with this one. I like the pretty blue. Make sure that box is checked where it says Show Image, so it'll show your image. And I'm going to click Save. It's going to take a second to load. Here in just a minute, you should see the background image appear. Okay, and there we are. So you notice I've got this green box. So this green box that's appearing on my console gives me a visual for how large my console is. And you can, as I mentioned, my console is set to 1000 by 650. So when it comes to building the console and adding your widgets, you want to make sure you don't have any widgets hanging outside this green box, because if you do, that's when you run in jeopardy of things getting cut off for people that have smaller screens. So there's no need whatsoever to make your slide area huge and have all these widgets sized and maxed out, because remember, your audience can resize these widgets themselves. So this is what the audience is going to be looking at, is this console, and they have, you can see, they have the flexibility to maximize and take everything to full screen if they want. And they can resize any widgets by dragging and dropping the bottom right-hand corner. So they're going to be able to set up their console to fit their workspace. So there's no need to build, a humongous slide area, because the audience is going to be able to resize them on their own anyway. All right, so going back, let's talk about branding on the console. One way to get your branding out there is to upload a background image with your logo on it. But you don't have to do it that way. You can simply upload a background image like we have, and then just add your company logo. So we have an image widget, and pretty straightforward. You just drag and drop the widgets onto your console, and the configuration button is how you actually change and configure them. So I'm going to browse my computer for a logo that I can use. And the logo is going to display, or the image is going to display at the dimensions you have set at the initial upload. So, if I have a logo that's set to, 100 by 300, that's how it's going to appear in the console. So we don't necessarily have a recommended size for a logo, because it's really, objective. However, big you want it to be is how big it's going to appear when you upload it. You can also hyperlink. So if you wanted to send them to your corporate website, if they were to click on that image, you can certainly do that. And you're not limited to just one image on your console. So if I wanted to, I could add maybe sponsor logos, or if I had other images that I needed to upload, I could certainly do that. So that's one way. So you can upload branding through a background image, or just simply upload an image widget. Also, you might consider having like a top line message. So with that, we have a text widget. And this text widget can be configured to say whatever you want to say. So a lot of people like to have the event title displayed, at the top, or maybe the event date, and that can easily be done through a token. So here we have event title and the event date. I'm actually going to put these over top of each other, and with the event title, I'll probably make that a little larger, make it stand out a little more. I can make it whatever color I want. So if I knew the official HTML code for the red CNN, I could enter that here at the top if I wanted. That's not going to look good. So let me just keep it basic and do black. And I can do the event date. Click Save. All right, so there's my token. And I've seen people add a token, for the way I'm showing you now, but then I've also seen people add tokens with, contact us, and they list a 1-800 number. That's another way that you could use it. So it's really whatever, purpose you need it for. So I'm going to click Save and Preview. All right, so here you can see my logo. I've got my event title. Now this is a perfect example of what not to do. I have this slide widget sized to support a 16:9 aspect ratio, but my slides themselves are set to a 4:3. So this is the example of the distortion I'm talking about. How you can see that the bottom of my slides are cut off and you can just tell something's missing. So this is exactly what you don't want to do. So that's why it's important you match the aspect ratio of the PowerPoint to the dimensions of the slide area. All right, so let's talk about how we interact with the audience, and that is most likely going to be done through a Q&A widget. So if you do not have a Q&A widget on the console, then there is no way for your audience to ask questions. So if you don't add it, they have no way of asking questions, so just keep a heads up on that. You can configure the Q&A widget to include multiple options. So if you want to maybe display the number that their question was received in or the time that they submitted the question, you can do that. But by default, those are checked no. Making sure that when they press the enter key, it'll send their question. Here, where it says email submitted questions, this is if you want to have all the questions that are submitted routed to an email address of your choosing. So if you had one person on your team that was going to be responsible for, answering questions after the live webcast, because on-demand viewers can still submit questions. So what I like to do personally is I'll do a live webcast, and then once the live webcast is over, I come back into my Q&A widget and add my email address in here. So that way, if an on-demand viewer asks me a question, then I can reply directly back to them in real time through email. So just something to think about if you want to use that. So Q&A is definitely a big one. Another popular widget is the resource list. This one allows you to basically share resources or maybe allow your attendees to download bonus content. So what you can do is you click on configuration. You can upload documents as a resource, or you can actually insert URLs. So if you want to direct them to particular websites, you can do that. Resources can be uploaded in a variety of formats. So as you can see here, PDFs, PowerPoints, Excel spreadsheets, Word docs, MP3s, MP4s. The list goes on. So if you have bonus material, white papers, case studies, videos, or if you want to allow them to download a copy of the PowerPoint, you can certainly do that. And you can always convert the PowerPoint to a PDF so that way they can't change anything. But this is how you would go about it. So if you wanted your attendees to be able to download a copy of the slides, you can convert it to a PDF or leave it in the PowerPoint format and then just upload it to your resource list. So I'll just call this best practices. And so you can fit, and forgive me if I already told you this, but you can fit up to 25 different resources in this one widget. So you've got plenty of room. But remember, less is more, because if you have a long list of 20 items, I don't know how many people are going to want to have to sit through and scroll through that. So just be selective and choosy about what resources you add. But you can add multiple ones. And then if obviously I've only got one resource, but if I had more, I can sort this list and move it up or down. All right, so we had a great question come in. So how do you notify on-demand viewers they can submit questions? The easiest way that just to kind of get it all out there when I'm doing housekeeping stuff is when I'm doing the live webcast and I'm going over housekeeping things in my live webcast, I just simply say, this webcast is going to be available for on-demand viewing. So if you would like to watch this on demand, please remember you can still submit your questions to me, and I'll be able to answer you directly through email. That's usually how I introduce it. You could always, maybe when the live webcast is over, maybe you can have a text widget with a little message right here above the Q&A saying on-demand viewers please may still submit their questions. That's another way. But I would say probably the easiest way, just to kind of, especially since you'll most likely be going over housekeeping items, is just to have it on a housekeeping slide or make it part of your introduction. But if you decide not to do that, you could always do another text widget and then, customize that to say whatever you want about that. Another widget, I don't know if you guys would be interested in this, would be the speaker bio. I would say Q&A, resource list, and speaker bio are some of the most popular widgets. Speaker bio widget, basically just you create a custom profile of your speakers. So if you're going to have multiple people speaking during your event, it may not be a bad idea so that way your audience can keep up with who's who. So you can click on configuration and then add a speaker. So here you can see you would just type in their name, their title, their company, upload their picture, and the recommended size is listed right here. And you could include a link to their corporate website or maybe their professional profile, whatever the case is. And then if you could easily copy in their biography off of their website, their corporate website. If they've sent their biography to you in an email, just copy and paste it in here so that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Or you can just key it in like I did there. Another helpful one, I don't know how involved in social media that you guys are, but yes, you can, great question. You can also add a LinkedIn profile. So if your speaker has a LinkedIn profile, you could include that, here, or you could include it, as a hyperlink, here in the actual biography. So that's another one. We have, a lot of people, a lot of companies, I'm sure as you know, are using Facebook, as a way to get out on social media. So our Facebook widget does allow attendees to log into their Facebook account and pull up their Facebook feed. Some people don't like that because they think it's distracting, which I can see. So instead of people logging into their Facebook account, a workaround for that would be to add a URL widget, and instead of, this is where the attributes button is fun. So the attributes button is where you can actually rename the widgets. You can change out the icons. So maybe for this, I'm going to say like us on Facebook. And instead of having that globe icon, I'm going to play a trick and use the Facebook icon instead. So this is a Facebook icon, and I'll show you where you can download these icons because they're open to all of our clients. And then so now when I click on this and I want to go to configuration, here's where I can actually copy and paste in my company's Facebook page. So that's another workaround that you have. There's LinkedIn widgets, there's a Twitter widget. So if you want to use Twitter during the webcast, you can define what is going to be displayed in the Twitter feed. So if I decide to use Twitter, I'm going to click on configuration. I would pull up my company's Twitter account. Notice that I'm not using the @ symbol here. But here is where I can customize what feed I want to have display in the Twitter widget. So I can choose to only show tweets with a certain hashtag, or I can actually choose to only display tweets also, or display tweets from a specific Twitter account. And then I can even take it a step further, and I can configure this to where anytime an attendee tweets during the webcast, all their tweets can either end with a specific hashtag that I choose or a URL. And since I'm configuring it and setting it up that way, the attendees can't delete the hashtag because of how I have it configured. So that's another option that you have. So you can see how quick it was just to do that. Now you've noticed I've kind of started adding a lot of widgets here. So this is also where the attributes button is going to come into play, because you certainly don't want to have 20 different widgets open when the webcast starts. So with that being said, that's when the attributes button is going to come in handy for you. So if I click on the attributes button of a widget, this is how I can determine what widget I want to have open when the webcast starts. So if I uncheck that box and click Save, then the widgets are still going to be present, but they're not going to all be open and cluttering up my console. So the attendees would simply click on it to open it. A lot of people like to have the resource list open and the Q&A widget open on launch as well. All right, so let's look at our questions. So great question. Are we able to make templates of the console, just like the registration page? And you can. So there's this templates link, and what you would do is you would just simply configure the console the way that you want it, get it perfect, click Save, and then once it's done saving, you can create your own templates. So what I would recommend, especially if you think you're going to go back and forth between the different aspect ratios, like some presenters want to use a 4:3, some may want to use a 16:9, I would put the aspect ratio in the title of the template, and then so that way I know. So all I would do is just simply give the template a name and click Save, and then once I do that, you can scroll down and you can see obviously all the templates. Done lots and lots of trainings that I've created. So to apply a template, you would just simply double click on it and it'll load the console. So the template basically saves the layout and the configuration of the console for you. All right, so Brenna, I hope that answers your question. Another question, can you activate a widget at a later time during the presentation? For example, if you want to enable the resources list towards the end of the webinar. It's a great question, but unfortunately you can't do that. You have to know, you would have to set everything up before the live webcast the way that you want. If it's a matter of you wanting to set the timing of when certain resources or links, I'll show you on Wednesday how you can actually push out URLs during the webcast so you can kind of set the pacing for that. But unfortunately, you won't be able to activate the widgets at certain times. It has to be done before or after the webcast. So just, yeah, great question. Yes, another great question. Can you track who downloads resources? And you absolutely can. And that is where, like I said, webcast URLs, you're going to hear me talk about this over and over. That's what the reports URL is for. So if you add a resource list widget onto your console, like I showed you, that is one of the widgets that you can track what resources are downloaded. So you see it's hyperlinked, so that means I can click on it. And my webcast hasn't started, but basically I'm going to be able to see who and their company and their email and what resource it was and if they downloaded it or not. So that is called the widget activity report, and I just clicked on that, and then here you can see the different fields of information that's going to be reported. So this reports URL is really going to give you a lot. Just to kind of give you a rundown, all of these are hyperlinked reports, so you can quickly just easily access it. So if you want to see how many registrants you have, who watched the live webcast, who watched it on demand, all the questions that were submitted, all that's going to be recorded automatically for you. So again, all I did was click on the webcast URLs and clicked on reports, and it took me to, sorry, I didn't mean to click out of it. It took me to this screen. All right, so before we go, because I know we're right at the top of the hour, so before we go, I want to show you how to get help. So in the upper right-hand corner, I showed you the help link, and this takes you to our help center. Sorry, I didn't mean to click out of there. And in our help center, if you know what you're looking for but you're not sure where to find it, that's where the keyword search comes in. So we have this search box. Everything's been, titled and organized accordingly, so please don't hesitate to utilize that. Also, here on the left-hand side, we have a support folder, and you'll see that the very first page is called Get Help Now. This is a live support chat. You can see it's available between 5:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. U.S. Pacific time. This is a great starting place for you. So if you have a general quick question about, how do I upload my slides, or how do I add a widget, or the widget isn't working the way I thought, whatever the case is, reach out to us through the live chat. If it's something that's going to require a little bit more investigating and maybe some troubleshooting, that's when you'll probably be instructed to submit a case unless you've already done that yourself. So going back, that's what this support link is for. This support link takes you to our support center. You can submit a case to us by clicking here. And just to give you some background, we will have a response to you within 4 business hours. So if you need technical support, submit a case. Go ahead and do it. There's that way we can, start investigating as to what the issue is. So you can see you've got multiple ways to contact support. You can do the live chat, or you can submit a case to us. So it's pretty straightforward. You would just select technical support as your case type, and then from there you'll be prompted to select more choices depending on what you need help with. So event setup is what we covered today. So I'll select that. The service type, here I can drill down even further as to what I need help with. So maybe it's something regarding the reports that I just showed you. I can choose reporting. The only time you should ever select critical is if it's going to impact your live webcast, like if it's a live event emergency. Like if your webcast is an hour or 2 away from starting and you're having trouble, that's when you select critical. Otherwise, you can do standard, or if it's something that's going to be higher priority. But standard time, like I said, we need to get this recoded. But the standard response time is 4 business hours. So you will have a response from us within 4 business hours of submitting your case. The summary, you just give us a quick blurb about what's going on. Here you can really give us the details. But what I like about the case system, too, is that you can add attachments. So if you have, screenshots, or maybe there are certain files that you are having trouble uploading, whatever the case is, just go ahead and add it to as an attachment to the case, and then you can submit the case here. So you can communicate with us through email once the case is filed. So you're going to receive an automatic email reply letting you know that we received the case successfully. And then at that point, once one of our support specialists picks up the case or is assigned the case, and they propose add a comment or a suggested solution or give you any kind of response back, it's going to notify you through email. Okay, great question. How do we handle emergencies during the live webinar? That is when you call this number here. So the Get Help Now page, it's at the bottom, the live event emergency line. This is 24/7 emergency phone support. It's only for live event emergencies. This is not audience support, so it's only for licensed elite users. So you can call this number at any time. Please make sure you have your event ID handy. Remember, that was located on the overview page of the webcast. So that number is listed here, and it's also listed in our support center. So if I go back to the support center, there's a Contact Us link, and then this is the emergency line right here. So that's what you would call. All right, and guys, that was all that I had for you for today. When we get back together on Wednesday, that's when I'm going to go over how to actually manage and present a live webcast. So anybody that's going to be part of the presenting team, please make sure you come back on Wednesday. And Karina, once I get the recordings processed, I'm going to send the links to you so you can distribute them to your team. But before I sign off, are there any other questions? All right.
No, thank you, Sarah. That was sorry, Mandy. That was great. Thank you. This is Ruth here. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, guys. Well, I will see you Wednesday, and I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Ruth? Ruth?
I don't know if she might have dropped.
Oh,
Is there something I can help you with?
No, I think we'll need to have a conversation with her about the migration. So it's probably
okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome. Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.